Hi everyone, this is Vivek Shrivastava. Welcome to my channel. And today we have with us, returning to us, Siddhartha Rastogi, who is the Chief Senior Executive at Ambit Asset Management and is one of India's top voices in finance and global markets. Siddhartha has over 2 decades experience in wealth management, capital markets, and global investing. Siddharth is a high-level expert on economic policies and how these policies affect a country's economy. Siddharth is a high-energy speaker and has a vast knowledge base in his head. And I'm really looking forward to today's podcast because we'll be delving into one of the hottest topics today, which is the Iran-Israel war and what this means for global trade, countries' economies all over the world, and specifically how this affects India. So welcome, Siddharth. Thank you for joining us again.
Namaste, Vivek. Many thanks for having me. Where the world is in a chaotic place, we have only Bharat, which is in a neutral stance, though Bharat is not going to be untouched with the vagaries of the geopolitical challenges. But yet, we are the ones who are trying to create equilibrium into the world and ensuring that the world becomes much more saner, much more civil, and much more peaceful in times to come.
Yes, I believe they're reaching out to PM Modi to sort of broker peace talks.
Correct. Absolutely. So, if one leader who can be trusted most at this point in time is the Prime Minister of India, in fact, UAE has actually articulated that if Prime Minister calls up Iran and calls up Israel as well as United States, there can be some common consensus which can happen. So the credibility of Bharat is extremely high because if I look at the two sides of the war, Bharat has supported Iran with medicines, food supplies. At the same time, it is a close friend of Israel as well as United States. And if you look at the Middle East food security, roughly 80 to 90% of the food comes from outside. It's predominantly India and China. And if you look at from Bharat's perspective, whether it was Russia, whether it was Ukraine, whether it was Middle East now, the food supplies, the essentials and the medicines go unhindered. Because the idea is, why should the war punish the common civilians, the common citizens of the world?
Absolutely. So, but you know, this war is already having quite a lot of effect on obviously oil and natural gas supplies. And India, of course, has been hit. Restaurants are closing all over. People are trying to buy cylinders in the black market and whatnot. What do you think about all of that? And what do you see the situation worsening, or what are the solutions?
Let's break down this entire conflict into 3 parts. Number 1 is the energy challenges. So we understand that Strait of Hormuz, which has been in the news for all across, it essentially allows roughly around 20% of the world energy to pass through it. Right. Now, if I look at the Middle Eastern geography, roughly around 33 to 34% of the crude supplies, of the oil supplies across the world is done by Middle East. 17% of LNG or the gas supply comes from the Middle East. Large part it goes to the Strait of Hormuz. Right. Now, very clearly, if the war continues, which it looks like, it may be for next few weeks, maybe a couple of months. We all thought that what happened between Israel and Hamas would last maybe for a month maximum. Now it's been from November 7th, October 7th, if my memory serves me right, till about today. So you are talking about closer to roughly around 1.5 years already. We were thinking Ukraine and Russian war, which is going to get over very, very quickly again, 7th of Feb 2022. And we have already, we are already 4 years in the war.
Yes.
And still counting. When will that get over? So unfortunately, there are no easy answers.
Right.
And as you rightly said, the impact of it is going to be felt not only by one community, one country, but across the globe. Now, the interesting part here is that if I look at in last 2 weeks from 28th of Feb, since the time this conflict started and got initiated in a big manner, look at some statistics. United States, the petrol and the crude prices, or the oil and the gas prices on an average American, has gone up by 23.5%. For Australia, it is closer to 30-odd%. For a relatively modest country, Nigeria, and one of the oil producers, Nigeria is one of the oil producers, yet their cost for the average American for the energy or the fuel has gone up by 40%. And you think about Bharat, zero. So if we talk about, we are now almost in third week of the conflict, and there has been no hike in the energy prices for an average Indian. And that's the beauty, how this conflict has dented the consumption power in every other citizen of the world, yet not impacting the Bharatiya citizen. So there is some good stuff which is happening. A lot of people are undermining that, but I'm very sure when people understand this perspective, they will eventually get a perspective that they are in one of the safest zones in the world.
That's definitely true. I certainly feel safe in India, not just, war-wise, bombs, bullets, and that sort of thing, but also the economic side of it. It's hasn't been affected very much at all. But that's interesting. How did the Indian government manage that? Where everywhere else the price of oil or gas, petroleum, as it's known in different countries, it's all gone up, but we haven't. How did we manage that?
So very, very simple math. What happened is, prior to 2014, the erstwhile governments had issued significant oil bonds to the tune of 3.23 lakh crores. And they were given free of cost to subsidize a lot of oil marketing companies. And that created further debt burden on the country. Now, what the government did is, remember that the current government, as well as the current line of thinking amongst the youth, is fairly simple. And I'll borrow this line from Shri Manu Smriti, and which says, Sarvam Parvansham Dukham, Sarvam Parvansham Dukham, Sarvam Matmavansham Sukham. Which essentially means that anything which you have no control on, anything where you don't have any prowess on, anything where unfortunately you have to rely on somebody else, will eventually give you unhappiness, grief, dukkha. Anything which you have control on eventually will lead to bliss, happiness, and sukh. Now, very, very distinctly, debt. Whenever you are in a debt trap, whenever you are in a situation which is adverse, and when you start borrowing and subsidizing somebody else, it pinches you immensely. And it will pinch you at the wrong time. So what the government did, very distinctly, these oil bonds were first paid off, and the last payment just went off in the month of Jan-Feb of 2026. Now the oil bonds have been redeemed. Now, in the process, what the government did, there was some bit of cushion which was taken. Whenever you bought a liter of petrol, little portion of your money would go to pay towards paying off these interests as well as bonds. so that there is no debt trap, so that our future generations are secured. Now, because of which there is cushion to the extent of 19% on the excise duty, which is levied on the crude products, which is a cushion. So yet the bonds have gone, there is cushion. So the country is not feeling the pinch of it. Another interesting thing which one is seeing is, some time back, RBI governor reduced significantly the interest rates. Whilst in the West, the interest rates are very, very high. So with the reduction in the interest, the average Bharatiya felt the pinch on their debt relatively modest. And that was also created buoyancy in the economy. Whilst on the other side, US is facing a double whammy. They are seeing higher energy prices, they are seeing higher interest costs. At the same time, because of tariffs, they have to purchase things at an expensive price. So to that extent, if we compare ourselves with the largest economy, average Bharati is far, far, far better off as compared to the external world. And if you look at, very interestingly, when all the countries, you know that our neighbor Pakistan and Afghanistan, they are loggerheads. We just saw that Pakistan bombed one of the locations and hospitals where roughly around 400 Afghanis were killed, and mostly they were women and children. Now, we are living in a hostile neighborhood, yet we have kept ourselves secure. And it is not surprising that all of a sudden, we are seeing that 1 crore Middle Eastern NRI. So Middle East has roughly around a 10 million or a 1 crore number of NRIs. And these are all prosperous. These are all relatively reasonably well off NRIs. They are wanting to, and I'm not talking about the laborers, I'm talking about the people who are settled in there. Their future generation. They are more than happy to relook at bringing their base back into the country, having an asset in the country, because if world goes into a chaos, India remains one of the safest zones.
So talking about the oil bonds, were these other countries where the prices of oil has gone up, were they actually purchasing bonds and were in a state of debt that way?
So what happened in the other countries, for longest years, there was no subsidy which was given into any of the companies or into any of the places. So it was totally market linked. In the country, what happened prior to 2014, everything was given as a freebie. And to that extent that nothing was market linked. In the process, what was happening is, a lot of oil and gas companies were bleeding. And since they were bleeding, government kept on issuing them oil bonds to subsidize the end energy prices. So what was happening is, there was gross mismanagement prior to 2014 into the way energy supplies were used.
And now all that is coming back.
Correct. So it came back, but prudently the government, the country paid it off. So we are off now. But unfortunately, somebody who has, and what would happen is, a lot of this subsidies, a lot of these crude subsidies will actually not flow to the industry or for the growth of the country. It was used so you understand, in the economy there are two kinds of expenditure. One is a capital expenditure which enables capital formation and then the multiplier into the economy. And then there is something known as a revenue expenditure, which means that you are using it for day to day. So most of these subsidies were not benefiting the country in any form or shape, and hence they were detrimental.
Right. Okay. So how about other things besides oil and energy? For example, wheat or textiles, or various things that are exported, imported. Right. Between countries.
Right.
Are they also being affected by all of this? Obviously, there's a blockade and all of that. But other than that, I'm assuming shipping routes are more or less the same.
So remember that broadly the shipping routes are all safe because nobody wants to disrupt rest of the supplies, and especially the food supplies and textiles which you articulated. But what one has to see through is very, very clearly that because the energy prices have gone up, every other product eventually will become more expensive. Because the same, if the crude was costing $62, then now it is costing $98 or $110, automatically it will be more expensive because the transportation cost for any product will automatically move up. So though the rest of the supplies are not getting impacted, but just because the energy costs have gone up, the cost of transportation has gone up, it will impact the consumption or the purchasing power of the individual because the prices automatically of everything will go up.
So could this spark a global sort of inflation wave all over the world?
Absolutely. So one of the concerns the world is facing is relatively higher interest rates in the United States, relatively higher interest rates in the West. At the same time, these energy disruptions will lead to higher level of inflation. Now, what is the extent of inflation? It's interesting that every $10 rise in crude prices, $10 rise in crude prices
Per barrel.
Eventually lead to, there's a time lag of 3 to 4 months, and if these sustain, it can inch up the inflation by 0.2 to 0.4% across all countries. So imagine we have seen that the Brent moving up from 68, 70 odd dollars, $32, going up to 110, and if it remains there, you can imagine a 100 basis to 120 basis rise in inflation. Already we are seeing in United States where there's a high possibility of a reversal of inflation upward, predominantly because of the tariffs. And if it is accompanied by a higher energy cost, it can be quite detrimental.
And then the United States Federal Reserve will respond by increasing interest rates, which will then probably make the markets fall, which they already are.
Fed does not have too much of leeway to increase the interest rates because US economies are in a peculiar shape. So let me give you an interesting perspective on that as well. The per day expenditure on the war by United States is $1 billion. $1 billion. Approximately, rough and ready.
I think it's more, 2 billion maybe, but from what I thought.
So rough and ready, $1 billion.
Huh.
They have currently a debt of $38 trillion and rising at a humongous pace.
Yeah.
Now, if you are already at a higher interest rate regime in United States, and if further inflation moves up, further borrowing moves up, the underlying market interest rates will also move up.
Right.
Because you have to borrow more money. If you have to borrow more money, automatically people will lend you at a higher price. Now, interestingly, if that happens, the average American, where the debt to net worth for an average American in terms of the household is closer to 1.2 to 1.3x. So your debt to net worth for an average American is closer to 1.2 to 1.3x, which means you have more debt than your net worth. In such an environment, not only the government, but the average American household will also get the pinch. And one is not very sure how much Fed can increase the interest rates, because if they do that, the US economy will slip into massive recession, which means massive job losses. The job loss data which came in just last month was also not very encouraging. The job losses are increasing. So what one sees is it's in a catch-22 situation. On one side, you are fighting a war for which you don't have the money. At the same time, you are levying tariffs because you don't to protect your own country, yet knowing that you don't have the supplies for manufacturing these own things, and both of it will lead and hurt an average American.
I have an interesting question around that. President Trump keeps stating, that the current Fed chairman is making a mistake and he should be decreasing interest rates. What would happen if, in today's environment, if President Trump gets his way and they actually reduce interest rates? What effect would that have in today's environment?
So what is inflation? Inflation is nothing but too much money chasing too few goods. Very, very simple. So money supply versus goods. Now imagine if the interest rates drop down. What will happen? There'll be more spending power in people's hand. But then you have already higher energy prices. You have higher, as of now, higher tariffs, which leads to higher costs of goods. Now imagine these goods which are relatively more expensive already, and energy cost which is already higher. If there is more money, it will further push the inflation, which means that the price rise in the goods and services will be humongous.
I think the reason for why they want lower interest rates is to somehow drive the stock market up or keep it propped up, possibly. But does that make sense if that will result in high inflation?
So essentially, if one looks at stock markets are driven by fundamentally two things. One is the earnings. Earnings means profit growth. So higher the profitability, higher the earnings, higher the PAC, profit after tax for the businesses, higher the stock price returns. But in the stock price there is a variable which is the interest cost. Now wherever the corporates are heavily leveraged, they have borrowed money, if the interest cost reduces there, then automatically the profits can grow. However, the bigger challenge is that if the interest rates drop significantly, then the speculative activity increases, which essentially means if the US interest rates drop, then what will happen? If the growth is not sustaining in the United States, the money will start chasing the emerging markets where the growth is far, far higher. So what it will do is, if the interest rates get cut, automatically US investors, US Wall Street will start looking at the Asian markets, or will start looking at the markets which are giving very high growth, including one of Bharat. So what the thought process is may or may not align completely, because if the interest rates are cut in a regime where the inflation is high, inflationary pressures are high, energy prices are going up, tariffs are up, consumption basket or your consumption purchasing power parity is reducing. In such an environment, if one cuts the interest rate, you are calling for a stagflation kind of a situation. Now, what is stagflation? Stagflation is an environment where your prices keep on going up and your purchasing power or your income levels keep on dropping. So the gap between your ability to purchase something will be very, very adverse. And in such an environment, the economy is in tatters. So what the economists or what the Fed is doing is the right thing. And our sense is that that the way has gone up tremendously. So unfortunately, if this war prolongs, maybe Bharat is also not going to remain unscathed from the inflationary pressures.
No, India, unfortunately, is not self-reliant on oil because of, I guess, lack of deposits, or even if there are deposits, which I've heard, they found deposits in the Andaman Nicobar area in the ocean, and then also somewhere in UP, but they haven't started, extracting of it. Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So basically, India is dependent. And so what can India do? I mean, how about things like, for example, France is entirely nuclear energy. They have the entire electricity comes from nuclear energy, solar. What about things like that?
So Vivek, there are three aspects to it. Number one is to move into the renewables and shifting entirely into renewables in such a short period of time. is not possible. So that's number one. Number two is, already the country has moved a large bit into the coal. So our coal production itself has gone up tremendously. And you are right. Now, the other places where the oil extraction or the oil can be produced, we are looking at those opportunities. However, again, it's not an immediate solution. So from a longer standpoint, we have to pivot. We have to pivot into the renewables, into the electric vehicles. We have to move into the segment where we become Atmanirbhar. But as of now, there are no shortcuts, because yet we import closer to 80% of our oil, and roughly around 2/3, 60%, 60 to 65% of the gas requirements. So as of now, in next 15 days, 2 months, 3 months, which is the tenure of the war, one is anticipating, if one cannot pivot very, very quickly.
Interesting question. How does this affect, and by this I mean the conflict, affect the currencies, USD, INR?
So what will happen is, whenever there is an oil shock which happens, world anticipates that the world economy is going to go into a slowdown mode. And whenever there's a slowdown mode, then people rush towards a reserve currency, the so-called reserve currency, which is currently US dollar. And hence, the dollar starts to appreciate. But if dollar starts to appreciate, vis-a-vis all the other currencies see a dip. So very clearly, whenever the crude will move up, there is an alignment that risk in the world economy is enhancing, because the economy is going to slow down because of the rise in energy costs. And if the energy costs are going to be higher, I want to make my assets safe, and hence I would move to dollar assets. And the dollar index moves up, and result of which all the currencies start slipping. Now, there is another interesting factor. Can dollar be trusted at the moment? So keeping in mind the very fact that it has $38 trillion, and it is borrowing more money with no backing, can this dollar dominance sustain? And hence, what we saw, the surge of gold. So what will happen is, the gold eventually, maybe today, maybe next 6 years, maybe next 8 years, one will see that amongst the countries, what will be the consensus? The consensus point only would be gold. And if it is gold, then automatically demand for gold eventually has to rise. There may be a short-term correction in gold. But is this a buying opportunity? Absolutely yes, because if the geopolitical chaos remains higher, and the debt in the United States remain higher, and every day increasing, eventually what will happen is that the gold will be the place where the consensus will lie. And that's why the gold is the best hedge. Also, one of the reasons why a lot of people are seeing that there is a bit of gold correction is because in an inflationary zone, gold doesn't yield returns. Gold, because it doesn't have any payouts. And hence, people, when there is a higher inflationary possibility, gold tends to correct. But keeping all that in perspective, gold yet remains an important asset class which every investor in the country should have. Historically, if you look at our mothers, sisters, great-grandmothers, everybody would love gold, and they continue to do so because that's the safest hedge. Today, if you look at Russia, which has been in war for last 4 years, it has been embargoed, it has been sanctioned. There is no country which is dealing with, there is no money supply which is happening. Only a couple of countries like Iran, China, India, or some countries are only doing barter. So how is the war being financed in Russia? So thanks to the precious gold which Russia has been acquiring since 2000, not today, since 2000, which they have sold and which they have been selling. And if one looks at roughly around 60 to 70% of their gold accumulation, which has happened through the years, through the last 25 years, has been sold off, and that's how the war has been financed. Now, Russia doesn't have the luxury of borrowing money the way US did, or the way US is doing. But Russia did this smart move. But again, thanks to the mark-to-market, because the gold prices have moved up, in value terms, their coffers have equaled.
Okay, interesting. What about the Indian rupee? Is this going to weaken the Indian rupee, or will this strengthen the Indian rupee, this conflict?
So very, very clearly, since we are an oil importing country, we are a gas importing country, we will have pressures in terms of the oil and gas. So it will put pressure on the currency, and we are seeing that. Now, there are two aspects. Earlier, RBI used to hold the currency and used to ensure that there is a range bound of the currency. Now, RBI has made it a market economy. So let the currency find its own new normal. What happens in the process when there is conflict, as I mentioned, that food, essential supplies, drugs, pharmaceuticals, everywhere, you need things, right? Because these are, if you need guns and ammunition, you also need food, supplies, medicines. India has been one of the largest exporters of that. And if the currency weakens, it enables the country's exports to a very, very large extent. To the extent of oil, automatically we have to face that brunt. But in the process, to a certain extent, the currency is, and we are seeing that currency has weakened some bit in the recent past.
Interesting. What are the sectors in India that are going to be affected more? And obviously, some of them are the energy and oil sectors, but what about other sectors that...
I would rather say that if your energy prices get hit, everything gets hurt, because transportation cost ultimately goes up and then everything gets impacted. However, I would rather put it in a different perspective. If you look at, there are certain sectors which are immensely going to get beneficial or benefit out of it. So one is defense. We are living in a world where the chaos happens just in a jiffy. And if that is going to happen, clearly the defense sector, which is Atmanirbhar Defense Services, definitely will benefit out of it. So that's one sector. Second is metals, because if the world needs more production of arms, ammunition, you definitely need metal. So that is second sector. Third is energy. So I would rather, Vivek, think that energy is going to be one of the beneficiaries, not because whosoever is producing is going to benefit out of it. The fourth will be pharmaceutical. So what will happen is, if the world is going to be a chaotic place, and this is the place where people will hide, so pharmaceuticals as a sector will immensely benefit out of it. Another place will be FMCG, because what will happen, people may stop large part of their higher discretionary spend. They will move into the lower discretionary spend, and that's where FMCG is going to benefit out of it. Another sector which will immensely benefit out of it is the PSU banking system. Now, the country has been immensely resilient in the banking framework. If you look at the global financial shocks, have never, and I'm sure never would, impact the Indian financial sector. And PSU banks have been one of the biggest beneficiary when the world is chaotic. People run towards safety, and that's how PSU banking system will benefit. So these are 5 sectors which I believe can greatly take advantage of the current scenario.
How about the IT sector, which for India is, of course, very, very important? Is it going to be positively or negatively impacted by this?
So with a weakness in the currency, clearly IT sector is going to get benefited, but to a large extent, IT biggies, how much they are able to pivot themselves into the AI and able to create AI infrastructure. Number 2, utilize and spread the AI infrastructure to get revenues out of it will be the determining force.
That's another interesting thing you brought up, AI, because putting aside even this conflict for a second, the AI is significantly impacting IT hiring, jobs. I'm just wondering, on top of all of that, we have the conflict as well. So, do you see more jobs being reduced, job market tightening even more?
So what will happen is, there is a two-way thinking on the AI. Number one is AI is gonna constantly keep improving, right? Currently, we are in generative AI. We'll move into an agentic AI very soon, maybe in next 1.5, 2 years, where the AI can write the codes itself. Now, the biggest challenge with the AI is the data pool and the deep thinking. So wherever there are manual jobs, where there is just those jobs AI can replace. But can the emotion aspect, the linkage aspect, the connectivity aspect, can that be replaced? The answer is no. I'll give you a very simple example. You want to make a PPT presentation? Fantastic. You put all the data and say that AI will make. Will it be to your liking? The answer is may not. You'll spend more time correcting it, editing it. Now, can that be done again by AI? The answer is no. Because it will not have your line of thinking. What it will do? It will pick up data from the data pool it is using, and that data pool itself can be very biased. So, I'm not saying there won't be any job losses, but how much? It's too exaggerated. How people thought that when the computers will come, humans will not be needed. Everybody coexists.
Right.
What you do is you start seeing efficiencies. When the digital media came in, people started saying that nobody will watch news. What happened? The news itself became digital. You started creating shorts. So what you did, you changed the format, you changed the structure, you changed the composition. But in essence, can you replace the necessity of it? The answer is no. And similarly, there will be unskilled people will have a tough time. But if you keep upscaling yourself, I don't think there is a challenge.
So, in the Indian stock market, the foreign investors have been selling. Why is that if India is such a strong emerging market?
So what has happened is, essentially, the FII selling has not been recent. It's not to do with the energy. They have been selling now for almost 1.5 years. And why have they been selling? Three simple reasons. The US interest rates have gone up, and if their interest rates have gone up, automatically they don't want to take risky bets on the emerging market. So that's number one. Number two is, what we are also seeing, that little bit of currency weakness, which is also getting the FIIs to exit. Number three is some bit of reallocation. So China was in an oversold zone till about August, September of 2024. China was in an oversold zone, and 5 years of negativity. And now and that's why we saw that some bit of selling which happened in the country. But what is interesting is not the past, is what lies ahead for us. Think about it. We have recently seen in 2 or 3 banks major FDI flow from some of the largest global institutions outside India. So they now own majority of those companies in the banking system. Imagine when you are ready for the FDI money to be pumped in, automatically when the time is conducive, the FII flows are going to be significant. So what we are going to see is as these headwinds, geopolitical and global headwinds, recede to a certain extent, or they normalize, they become the new normal, then what will happen is automatically earnings remain strong in the country and foreign flows will start chasing the country. So maybe in a quarter or quarter and a half or 2 quarters away, we will see 2 quarters ahead, we will see significant flows back into the country from the hot money perspective or the FII money perspective.
What about startups and investment into startups? So for example, I myself am doing a startup, as you know. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Before we continue, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something I'm really excited about, my startup app, Affinity. Are you tired of scrolling endlessly and still feeling disconnected? That's why I created Finity. It's not just another social app, it's your connection engine. With Finity, you can instantly discover events, hangouts, and people around you who actually share your vibe. Post about what you love. Be seen by people who get it and turn online into offline. Finity isn't just social. It's real, it's local, it's you. Download Finity today and live your vibe. And investor funding is difficult to begin with. How does this affect startups all over?
So very, very categorically, if so, it's not only tech startups. So I wouldn't want to generalize the impact, because there are, if you are in the food business, now again, if you are in the packaged food business versus ready to eat, if you are into ready to eat food, you will get impacted. But if you are in the packaged food, you are going to make a killing out of it. So not all startups will get impacted negatively. However, generally when the market environment, market mood is pessimistic, the funding relatively becomes more challenging and difficult. Having said so, since a lot of startups are innovating ideas and doing phenomenal work to solve the energy crisis itself, they are going to immensely benefit out of it. We thought that during COVID, nobody is going to succeed. We saw logistics companies, cold logistics companies, delivery companies doing phenomenally well. We saw FMCG companies doing well. We saw the parcelization, the smaller parcelization of the products became a great opportunity. So how do you innovate? Similarly, if you are doing anything with the aerospace, if you're doing anything with the drone technology, we are doing anything with the radar technology, we are doing anything with the defense, we are doing anything with the auto efficiency, you're doing with the fuel efficiency, you're going to be funded like crazy. So it depends which space you are in, and you're going to make tons of money out of it.
I'd like to now discuss two scenarios. One scenario, the war continues, not only continues, it escalates, it gets even broader geographically and continues on for a longer time, months even. And then, of course, the second scenario where the war quickly stops. So let's do the first one where it gets worse and worse. So what in that scenario, will we just see more of an amplification of all of what's already happening, I suppose?
Russia and Ukraine, when it started, it remained largely within the contours. When we saw Israel and Hamas, it has broadened, it has widened its reach. If this war escalates, my sense is that more and more countries may not want to enter or interfere directly into the war. So it will take the shape of what Russia and Ukraine took, which means more countries may not participate into the war. Because remember, nobody at this point in time wants to spend two things: unnecessary arms ammunition, because it's becoming very expensive, right? Because every country want to defend themselves. Number two is, nobody wants to disturb the energy supplies. So until and unless it is very critical for me to enter into the war, I won't want to take sides. We are seeing that North Korea has been constantly talking. It hasn't taken sides. It is only being opportunistic. So otherwise,
same with China.
Same with China, same with Russia. Russia is not directly supporting Iran in terms of arms, ammunition, or people. It's fighting its own war. That's another challenge. But even China or North Korea, they have not entered. Similarly, if you look at any other country, whether it is Taiwan, whether it is South Korea, whether it is Indonesia, Malaysia, nobody wants to unnecessarily participate into a conflict. Unless you hurt me, harm me, I'm not going to enter. And another thing which all the world leaders, presidents and the prime ministers are thinking, that now they should have a precision precision firing rather than a long elongated war. So we saw when Operation Sindoor happened, it was decisive, it was impactful, and it was precise. We heard the nuclear facilities with very high precision. Let me just give you it's a digression from the topic. Think about it. The facilities which were hit in Pakistan, which own nuclear assets underground, they were made of 6 feet metal, and yet the missiles could go through. How? It is not possible for the missiles to break that 6 feet thick wall or the ceiling. You know what they did? They spotted the air conditioning vent, which is 0.5 meters by 0.5 meters. It's just small. Precisely, they hit the vent and then they exploded inside. So so the first time AI was actually used in the world for the warfare was by Bharat, not by any other country. And this is exactly now the formula is do specific targeting rather than just bombarding. Today we are seeing that US is also under pressure because to drop a 20,000-30,000 USD drone, US is sending $1 million or $2 million worth of missile. So imagine $20,000-30,000 worth of a drone is of Iran. Low-cost drones are being dropped or are being forced to be hit by $1 million or $1.5 million worth of a missile. It doesn't make economies of scale. It doesn't make, this can hurt the war economics wrongly for United States.
So if the war keeps escalating, we're going to look at what? Higher oil prices, lower stock market, higher inflation. That'll just get worse and worse, probably.
So three things one should see is if the war escalates, clearly inflation will start moving up, energy prices will start moving up, gold will start eventually moving up. Stock markets, no. Not everything in the stock market will collapse. What will happen is there will be sectors which we spoke of, will benefit out of it. There will be sectors which will get impacted, but on an overall basis, the economy will get impacted. So stock markets will tend to, on an average basis, will tend to be lower. However, certain sectors will immensely benefit out of it.
Great. Now, how about the other scenario? Let's say today, the war, whatever, some sort of peace deal is reached, which seems unlikely right now, but you never know. It's all kind of settles down. So what would happen?
So if the war settles down rather quickly, and if there is a consensus which is brought in by all the countries to settle down amicably through a diplomacy, then what will happen is humongous economic growth. Why? Rebuild Ukraine, rebuild Iran, rebuild Middle East. Whenever you rebuild, you do capex, and whenever you do capex, you do expenses. When you do expenses or you do capital expenditure, the profitability or the earnings of the businesses move up tremendously, and the world economy will skyrocket. So phenomenal. So sooner the war gets over, the rebuilding will start, and the world economy will rock.
Stock markets as well. They'll kick.
100%. Absolutely.
So what are some economic indicators that people should watch over the next few months? What warning signs should people be looking out for? Average, ordinary people.
So three things average Bharati should look at, or anyone should look at. Number one is the inflation number, consumer price index, or the inflation. So that's number one should look at. The second is the petrol and the diesel price. That's the second thing which one should look at. And the third thing, petrol, diesel and LPG price. And the third thing is the gold price. So these are three things. But along with the gold price, you should also look at the dollar index. So these three things will give you where and what we are up to. But remember that before an average Bharati or an average investor looks at it, if there is even an iota of a peace deal, or if there is a iota of things settling down, the markets will automatically going to react in an aggressive manner, which essentially means that market reacts on news, not on reality. So if there is any bit of positivity or any bit of consensus which comes in, you're going to see that market skyrocketing.
In the case of a peace deal, things calm down. What will happen with gold and silver?
So what will happen is gold and silver temporarily may correct to a certain extent. Now, so there are three aspects. Number one is silver is an industrial commodity. Silver is essentially, so it's a precious metal, but it's an industrial commodity. It is used in EV, it is used in solar panels, it is used in batteries. So different users of silver, but it is an industrial commodity at large. So if there is peace, or if there is consensus which arrives, automatically silver will move up, because the industrial production rebuild, as I said, rebuild the entire world, parts of it, large part of Europe, large part of Middle East. If rebuilding of those things happen, silver automatically will benefit out of it. As far as the gold is concerned, remember that the problem would be of the US dollar. Now, once the war settles down, people will start looking at more pragmatically the US dollar borrowings. And if that happens, and if they are not able to refinance their debt at a reasonable cost, automatically gold again in that environment will move up. So that's second. Number three is one thing this war has taught. What? It is Middle East countries till now were gifting expensive, very expensive gifts to United States in lieu of their security. Now they have realized they also need to plan for their own security. So what will happen is, large part of the Middle Eastern money will now move to acquire arms, ammunition, and aero defense equipment. Very, very fighter planes, jets, directly. Because they have realized beyond a point, they cannot remain dependent on an external country. Because external country ultimately be driven by the whims and fancies of the head of the state, and head of state will keep changing.
Right. You mentioned gold and silver being an industrial commodity more than gold. But, one thing I've noticed over the years looking at the charts, the gold and silver basically follow each other. Or they basically match. It's very rare that I've seen that gold went up and silver went down, or the other way around. So in spite of silver being an industrial metal, somehow, it still behaves like a commodity only.
So remember that gold and silver, they as I mentioned, they are both precious, but the trajectory is very different, the usage is very different, and even their trends are very different. So you will see that silver correcting massively, gold doesn't correct that much. Silver rises up massively because there is more speculation, and this is what you are seeing as of now today.
Sure.
But if you look at the historical past, there have been times when gold has rapidly risen, because in a case of an uncertainty, in case of a gloom doom, in case of a recession, what will happen? People will, in case of a chaos, people will go for gold, not for silver. So if I remove last 2.5 years from the history, you will see that the trends don't match. It's only in the recent times when we are seeing that the trends match.
Okay.
Because the speculative activity in silver has gone up much higher as compared to gold.
Okay. What can India do to, I won't say take advantage of the situation, because that sounds grasping, but, just what policies should India take given the situation now?
So what we are seeing interesting is that in a context like this, when the war itself is evolving, we have seen that South Pars facility, which is the largest gas reserves in the world, jointly managed by Qatar as well as Iran, and it has supplies for almost 13 years to supply the gas to the entire world, is being bombed. Now, if that happens, what lies ahead? If the facility itself gets disrupted, it means not only today, the next 3 years, 5 years itself can get disrupted. Similarly, what we saw, Kharg Islands, which Iran uses almost 90% for its exports, and it has 30 million barrel per day capacity, 30 million barrel storage capacity, that is being bombed. Now, if things keep evolving, you can't take a position at this moment that you can plan for a longer term. What you need to do is ensure that energy supplies, inflation remains intact. What as an average Indian, what as an average Bharatiya one should do is fairly simple. You should try and be prudent, cut down on your energy consumption, whatever you can. It's not hurting your interest, but at the same time, don't waste it unnecessarily. So that's number one. Number two is buy products which are made in Bharat, consume products which are made in Bharat, use products which are made in Bharat. That will elevate the economy. So that's number two. Number three, what you should do is ensure that if there is somebody who's creating rumors, who's creating, challenges, spreading the wrong thing, at least be prudent and clarify the stance. Remember, the reason, and we initially spoke about it, the reason why we are safe is because our Rashtra is safe. Our country is safe. The minute the country is unsafe, irrespective of your economic status, irrespective of your social status, irrespective of anything, you're not going to be safe. Is the richest man in Gaza, is the most influential man in Gaza safe? May or may not.
Probably not.
So that's the point which we are trying to make is, as a Bharatiya citizen, as a person who owes this to the country, do these three simple things.
Great. Thanks, Siddharth. We are pretty much out of time now. So did you have any sort of last words for our viewers, possibly some advice on how to deal with all this sort of emotional stress and whatnot? We of course, are not feeling it so much here in India, but I have friends in Qatar and other parts of the Middle East who are in pretty bad shape. So how does, given your knowledge of Indian Sanskriti and all of that, how does one get through periods like this?
So I can imagine that periods like this can be very, very painful, very, very stressful. So very, very simple. What one should do is, so remember, this entire Prakriti, as per Sanatan, is being run by Narayan, Shri Vishnu, Shri Hari, Shri Bhagwan. So just remember him. And what is the simplest way to remember him? Whenever you are in stress, and this will work, what I'm going to tell you now, it will work. Whenever you are in stress, whenever you are anxious, whenever you are in grief, whenever you have challenges in your mind, just say a very short chant, Hari Sharnam, the lotus feet of Shri Bhagwan. That's it. Just remember that. So what you'll say, Hari Sharnam. When you are when you are anxious, when you are in anxiety, it will be very difficult for you to say it in your mind. You will not be able to. When you are in grief, you will not be able to, because you are remorseful, you are sad, you are filled with anxiety, you don't know what will happen in the future. So then, very simple, say it loud. Hari Sharnam. Keep saying it innumerable times, and slowly it will sink in your mind and body and your soul. Then automatically it will calm you down and it will give you the way. Second thing what you should do, and you can see there is a pocket Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and if the camera can be placed in there, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So remember, Gita is the Guru. Very, very one simple thing. A lot of people seek guidance. A lot of people seek that they are confused. What to do? You have choices. Which choice is right? Which choice is wrong? How should one go ahead with it? Very, very simple. Srimad Bhagavad Gita is the Guru, is the guide. What you should do? Pick up any Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The cheapest one costs 35 rupees in English. You can buy it from any Gita bookstore. What you need to do, it has only shloks and the meaning of it. It has verses and meaning of it. There is no explanation. Just verse and the meaning. Take the book, close your eyes, ask the question. Talk about your grief. Talk about the situation, talk about the problem, talk about the condition which you are in. Open the book, read the first shlok which comes in front of you. The first one. It does not matter which page you have opened, it does not matter which shlok you are reading. Read the shlok. Now there can be only two scenarios because Srimad Bhagavad Gita is the conversation between the Arjun and Shri Hari, Shri Narayan, Shri Krishna. So there can be only one thing, either Bhagwan Uvach, which essentially means Shri Krishna is talking. If that happens, then read the verse. I know your Sanskrit may not be great. Doesn't matter, just read the shlok. Read the meaning of it. Close the book, close the granth, close your eyes. You will get your answer. You will get the solution. You will get the right path. The second option can be, if you open the book, the shlok which comes to your mind or which you see, your eyes see first, is Arjun Uvach. Arjun speaks. Then read the second shlok where Shri Hari gives the answer. Close the book. After reading that, you will get your answer. Remember, every product, every service, everything comes with a manual. The only thing which doesn't come with a manual is life. Srimad Bhagavad Gita is the life manual. It will tell you which direction you should head. So, Srimad Bhagavad Gita is the guide, is the guru. Whenever you are in doubt, just pick up this copy. It is available online. And you don't have to pick up thick Gitas. Just the thinnest one, it hardly costs 35, 40 bucks. Always keep it with you. And you will have a... So, a lot of Western world talks about quality of life. Just by doing this small act, your quality of life will enhance by 75 to 80%. Just this small bit. So try and you'll have no challenges.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So Siddhartha, tell me, which are the countries that are benefiting from this conflict?
So interestingly, if you look at the sequence of events, what happened is Iran and US were talking to each other and they were being saying that disarm yourself, etc., etc. And all of a sudden we see the supreme leader of Iran being killed along with 35 to 40 odd commanders and the immediate family of the supreme leader as well. Who did all this? So remember, I always say this, and this is exactly why the Ukraine and the Russian war was fought, and exactly the same reason why the Iran and the US conflict also started. So everything boils down to money. We saw that Israel has been requesting US to bring to initiate the war and bring the Iran down because it has been one of the opponents. However, who supported this was Saudi Arabia. So very interestingly, as soon as Saudi Arabia, pushed or coerced or ensured that the war starts immediately, the Gulf of Hormuz or the Strait of Hormuz got embargoed. Instantly, what happened? So there is a pipeline. There's a pipeline which is closer to 1,200 miles through the desert. Saudi Arabia starts pumping in 7 million barrels per day through that pipeline. It was built roughly around 45 years back. So the Gulf of Hormuz roughly around, moves across 20%. One third of it is being now pumped distinctly by Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia becomes an eminent beneficiary of this war. Number two, Norway. Norway, which has been as soon as the Israel and Hamas conflict started, we have been, or the Russian and the Ukraine war started, we have been seeing the supply disruptions, and Norway pumped up its production. Today, major oil and gas supplies from in Europe is being supplied by Norway. Similarly, US, we all know, is the largest producer and the largest consumer of oil as well as gas. Now, there again, whatever is the shortfall, Canada has been pumping their oil. So these are the three major countries which are raking moolah. And everyone in this Kalyug, in this Ghor Kalyug, is only wanting to promote their own interest rather than looking at Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. So that's where Bharat comes into the picture and looking at a broader thing, protecting yourself yet ensuring world peace. So
that was an amazing episode. We got a lot of information and insights. Viewers, please comment below on the podcast, and let's have a lively discussion on this. Siddharth's information will be in the description below. Also, Siddharth is an author and has written a very amazing book called 100X, which is a very good self enhancement manual, almost you could say, in a story form. I've read it myself. It's great. The information will be there in the description below. Other than that, thanks a lot, Siddharth, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Thank you, Vivek, for having me. And remember, whenever you are in a challenging situation, remember Hari. Hari Sharnam, Hari Sharnam, Hari Sharnam.